Hi, and welcome to week 3. So, we're going to talk about Christopher Marlowe this week and his play, Dr. Faustus. But as preparation for that, I want to talk mostly in this lecture in some detail about um, what led to drama in the 16th century and then the nature, more specifically, of what Christopher Marlowe brings to drama. And most of our discussion of Dr. Faustus then will happen on the discussion board. Okay, so the 16th century is the beginning of the Renaissance, and it's when we see drama emerge. And this emerges, it's important to know, from the medieval period when such a thing called the mystery or the miracle play became popular. And they became popular because the Bible was the most important story of that period. And in order for the population to be able to hear the stories of the Bible, it was communicated through dramatic enactments because most of the population was illiterate. So in addition to suggesting the mysteries of God, the mystery play, the title also comes from its origins in these enactments, that is from the word métier, which in French means trade or profession. And as it turned out, the mystery plays were performed by the trade guilds who would sponsor a wagon or a float during Easter when the dramatic cycles were staged. So you can see in this image here a sort of reenactment of one of the wagons or floats and people dressed up as the actors and on their way to perform the mystery play. So the stories of the Bible are broken down. There's the shepherd's tale. There's the tale of Noah. If you know the Bible well, you can probably imagine which stories would have been repeated in each cycle. And they were conveyed, as I said, by the guilds. And the guilds chose according to their trade. So, for example, the Bargemen's Guild chose the story of Noah because, of course, there was the building of the ship. The Carpenters Guild might have chosen the tale of the crucifix. Again, the cross is wood. You can imagine what different guilds would have chosen which stories, how it suited their, as a sort of medieval form of advertising. So this is the root or the beginning of the British theater. And we know from what records we still have that the guilds kept lavish costumes. We in fact have some of the scripts from some of the city cycles, which were the larger cycles of the mystery plays. And these would have then influenced the theater as it was emerging in the Elizabethan period. Certainly we know that the Elizabethan playwrights drew on the popularity of the mystery plays. They referred to them in their plays, and many of them probably were sons of guildsmen, so they would have known the mystery cycles intimately. It's important to know that the church always had a sort of stiff relationship with theater, and this also is rooted in the history of the miracle plays. The church needed the dramatic enactments for the illiterate masses to have access to the Bible stories, but there was always a tension. So, for example, we know from the scripts that we have extant that some times the certain characters would be played very broadly for comedic intent, and the church might feel that that deviated from the sort of seriousness of the tale and would sort of censor the guild for that. So that tension remained with theater for centuries to come. We know as late as 1960 that the Lord Chamberlain had to approve every performance in Britain, and then he would, exclude things that had inappropriate references to royalty, blasphemy, sex. And certainly then, as the theater is emerging in the Renaissance, there was a very tense relationship with not just the church, but also the court. As I mentioned just a moment ago, the mystery plays then, they're also called miracle plays. They're interchangeable, influenced the great dramatists of the Renaissance. So, for example, in Marlowe's play Tamburlaine the Great, this was the first of his tragedies, we find shepherds who are bemoaning their role as they observe a king from the hillside. And that's a direct reference to the second shepherd's play of the Wakefield cycle. And no doubt, not only did Marlowe know that, but he was drawing on that for the sort of audience appeal it would have. Or, for example, in Shakespeare's Hamlet, Hamlet instructs the players who are visiting Elsinore not to out Herod Herod. And what he's referring to there is the way that Herod was played in the mystery plays. He was often played as with a lot of ranting and roaring. And so Hamlet's sort of cautioning them, don't overdo it. I know that's the way it's usually done. So it's useful to remember that both Marlowe and Shakespeare grew up in large cities, medium-large cities, Stratford and Canterbury, and both were the sons of guild members. So they would have known the cycles and seen them every year and possibly even participated in them as boys. Shakespeare's father was a glove maker. Marlowe's father was a shoemaker. So let's focus a little bit more now on Christopher Marlowe. He had a very short life. He was born in 1564 in Kent, the son of a shoemaker, and therefore was a descendant of the guild system. And with him, we see literature moving out of the upper classes and a little bit more into the middle class. It's not as though he's like Chaucer, who was just on the edge of aristocracy or royalty. He's solidly middle class. He went to university and was clearly well educated. But there's some things about Marlowe that make him really one of the bad boys of literature. And that's an appealing thing, but it's no doubt why he had such a short life. First of all, he had an ambivalent relationship to Catholicism, which is to say that it's possible that he practiced Catholicism or appreciated it. And that, in the time of Queen Elizabeth I, was very dangerous. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and was emphatic about making the Protestant religion the religion of England. So it was very risky business to appear the least bit Catholic. There's also just a persistent hint of atheism in his plays, which is risky. Another risky business he was involved in is that he was a spy in France for his country, for the Queen. And that can certainly get you in trouble with the court or with another country. Furthermore, there's evidence suggesting that Marlowe was gay. And there's a lot of evidence, but sayings from him that all those who don't I can't remember exactly what it goes. All those who don't like boys are fools was part of it. Or he said that Jesus was the bedfellow of John the Baptist. Things like that that obviously could have landed him in prison. Furthermore, his play King Edward II is the story of a king who is a homosexual. So all of that might be why he ended up dead at the hand of somebody else's dagger in a tavern when he was in his late 20s. At first, it was understood that he was killed in a drunken brawl in the tavern, possibly over a woman, possibly for an unpaid bill. And then later it emerged that he was probably assassinated because of political intrigue, and that political intrigue could have been any of the risky behaviors I mentioned above. These things are noteworthy because of the nature of his plays, by the way. So, about his career, it spanned a mere 5 years, and in that short time he wrote 4 great tragedies, improving with each one, of course, but really they were highly influential. All of them had 2 things in common that I want to now just focus on for the rest of this discussion. First, they shared the theme of the overreacher, and that is the idea of a man's attempt to better himself or his position, and often involving hubris, sort of going beyond what's possible. So in Tamburlaine, a shepherd seeks to become a king. In The Jew of Malta, he explores the ideas of Machiavellianism, which were new at the time and very risky, the role of kings and rulers in political statecraft, sort of again, going beyond themselves. Edward II, as I said, explores a king's homosexual love, and that brings him down. And Faustus, Dr. Faustus, is the best example of this theme and of Marlowe's writing abilities. The other thing they all share in common is blank verse, and I'm going to spend some time on this. Blank verse is composed of unrhymed iambic pentameter that was first developed in Italy, but it became widely used throughout the Renaissance. And so we can't quite say Marlowe is the inventor of it, but he perfected blank verse. It allowed him an extraordinary range and flexibility, and most importantly, when he disregarded the traditional rhymed couplets that were previously dominant, his characters were able to have a much more natural voice and expression. So it was much more powerful. His soliloquies are famous examples of blank verse. So blank verse is generally composed of 10 syllables. Every line has 10 syllables each, and the syllables are arranged in pairs. That's a foot in poetry. And I am is a foot, then, with the first syllable unstressed and the second stressed. Da-dum. This is very common to us. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. This rhythm is very common to English poetry, and even the way we tend to just emphasize our speech. So, for example, Marlowe's line, "Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships?" In that line, "was this," is one unstressed and one stressed foot. Therefore, it's iambic. And pentameter simply means 5 or 5 meters. So a line of poetry written in pentameter has 5 feet or 5 sets of stressed and unstressed syllables. And if you want to look at this, there's a great site that I've got here noted, and you can go to that on your own, because there are lots of nice examples and good discussions. So an example of Marlowe's blank verse, and this is from Dr. Faustus, so you will read this. "Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Sweet Helen, make me immortal with a kiss. Her lips suck forth my soul. See where it flies. Come, Helen, come, give me my soul again. Here will I dwell, for heaven be in these lips, and all is dross that is not Helena." So as you can see, each pair has 2 syllables, but they don't necessarily have to be the same word. So, for example, in 1,000, it's broken, and Ilium, it's sort of, we elide that there's 3 syllables there and make it 2. So, there's liberty that a writer can take. But even note in this lovely example of his blank verse, Marlowe's riskiness when he says that there's heaven in these lips and all is dross that is not Helena. There's a little bit of blasphemy going on even in this line, and there's much more to that in the play. One more point I'd like to make about blank verse, in addition to it allowing for much more natural speech and therefore really elegant soliloquies in Marlowe and Shakespeare and Milton, it's also just more natural for English, which is very poor in rhyme endings. And blank verse doesn't have to be have end rhymes or even rhymes in the same way that other forms of verse do. So if you want to think of this in a concrete way, think about the word love and think of what words rhyme with it in English. And there aren't many. Dove, glove, right? Nothing particularly elegant. But think of it in Italian, and you have amore, you have a word like honor, onore, courage, cuore, and I'm sure, I'm not an Italianist, but there are many more. So you notice then how you can, in Romance languages, maybe you don't need blank verse in the same way that it's functional in English. So again, just to emphasize, Marlowe's soliloquies demonstrate blank verse beautifully, and I urge you to take a note of those in Faustus. So let me just summarize by pointing out that though he did not write for long, Marlowe had enormous influence on his contemporaries, Shakespeare and Kidd, but also on generations of writers to come. So if you look, for example, of this in Dr. Faustus, you will find it in his soliloquies. And then also I urge you to look for the theme of the overreacher in this play as you read through it. I'll see you on the discussion board.